Hi, Miranda. How you doing? All right. Thank you for your post. I was just reading through this. So the mouse, the gaming mouse, it is. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right over to the composition, which I have up right here in a separate window. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, I think it's a good start. I think that the image itself is really interesting, and I'm so glad you elected to keep that cord in there. Now, I'm just wondering, is it? I'm not a gamer, and this is a gaming mouse. So is it normal to use a corded mouse in gaming, or is this just an alternative to a Bluetooth mouse? I don't. Forgive me, but I'm not familiar with gaming equipment, so I'm not even really sure what the answer to that question is. I think this is really interesting, though, that the cord is included in the image. I think it adds an enormous amount of visual interest to the composition itself. So as opposed to just having the mouse. Design in everyday life, pretty good job here. I think that the typeface is pretty interesting. I think it does point a little bit to the digital realm, and that creates a nice logical connection between the digital world of design and the object, the mouse, as it relates to typography. So I think this is a good type choice. Pretty good hierarchy in the headline subhead area. That's good. Nice right alignment there. Generally, I think your letting and kerning are done pretty well here too as well. So good job. One thing I would say is that there's one area where I think that the kerning could be adjusted. Actually, two areas. I think the I and N is a little too close. The space between I and N is a little too close. Actually, I just found I've got three areas. It has to do with the I. And if you remember from the course lecture, placing I's, the letter I, especially a sans serif typeface, too close together can create some visual vibration and almost impede readability. What you want to do is increase the kerning between the I and the N there. Between the I, the L and I is fine, but the I and F, I would increase that kerning a little bit. And again, over here, between the G and the I, right there, and the I and the T right there. So just open up, again, also right here, in between the M and the I and the I and the N. For some reason, this typeface seems to have very, very little counter space associated with the capital I. And for that reason, I think it's throwing off the kerning in the typeset. So be aware of that. Okay, so I want to jump over to the requirements for this assignment. So let's do that right now. I'm just going to put this on hold for 1 second because I don't have that open, so I'll be right back. Okay, so there are a couple. I've got the requirements open, and I'm over here on week 4, assignment 4. Part 1, type and image relationships. Design in everyday life, first iteration. We'll come down to the instructions area. So the first thing we see is your selected object must be the dominant image. It is. That's great. You cropped it. Really interesting. That's great. Poster must include an image of the object in use. Take a picture of someone using it or interacting with it. We don't have that. We need an image of somebody interacting with the object. Poster must include one image resulting from the use of your object. We don't have that either. So what would be the result of using a gaming mouse? You need to really think about that and try to come up with a solution. It could very well be just a picture of somebody using it, playing a game with the mouse, or designing using the mouse. So in a high degree, I think with the mouse itself, the image of the object in use and the results from the object of use could be closely related. Two components, if you kept the object of a mountain bike, examples of everything like here. So you've got your components. You've actually got 3 components. That's great. Poster must include one paragraph of text that describes what this object is outside of it, and means how you picked it. And this is an important consideration because right now you've got this layout, but you don't have the required text, which means to add the required text, you're going to have to completely recompose this layout. So that could be problematic in that while working a project, you should really have all of your all of your requirements right in front of you so you can accommodate for that. And that's pertinent in a lot of ways because right now as you've got this work right here, this work basically has to be recomposed anyway because we don't have the required type in here. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's kind of problematic to set up a composition without all of the required parts, because the required parts, adding some of the required parts specifically in this case, would require recomposing of the entire composition. And I'll get to the end of that a little bit more in 1 second. Design in everyday life, you're there. Must include a small caption text either. And we don't have, well, actually, we've got captions, but I wouldn't say they're small. Um, I'll go over that now. Well, let's go ahead and jump over to the composition. I'll give you my reactions. So, of course, obviously, we don't have that paragraph of text, and that's needed. I also think that you're really reluctant to use negative space in this composition. I think everything is really pushed to the corners. Everything, every area of the composition is consumed by design elements and or typography. So you're really not allowing design negative space to be used as a design element. I think one of the issues here is that these images are so big, and the type that is the captions are so big. They're really, really large. So when you think about it, the headline and subhead would be the largest area of type, and this points to hierarchy. And then your body copy would be the next largest, and then the smallest, of course, would be the captions. Now, I think one of the issues, of course, we don't have all the required components, so we need that. But one of the issues with your captions, there's a couple of issues with the captions. And I think the main issue is well, it's typography. And we take a look at the typeset here. We see these enormous spaces between words. And that's a problem. I can't figure out why there's these giant spaces between words. Don't see it so much here, but most of these the typesetting here, and I don't think it's a very compelling typeface at all. This is a mono-weight typeface, which means monospace, meaning that it's designed to resemble an old typewriter typeface, which to me is probably some of the most impersonal type ever. I mean, typewriters were really objective in their presentation of type. No subjectivity in there at all. So I think since this is a piece that is a personal favorite, we kind of want to add a little bit more personality to the type. So I do not recommend using a monospace typeface here. Watch that spacing too. And technically, well, I wouldn't call that a widow because the type is so short. You do want to use a period though. If this is custom deep cycle deep enough sensitivity, that's a complete thought. So that constitutes a sentence, which means there would be a period there. Same thing here, too easily accessible and customizable side mouse buttons. That's not a complete thought. So watch your verbiage here. You want these to either be a complete thought or just an idea. Clean and sleek look. So basically, yeah, if you're not using complete ideas, you wouldn't have to use a period, but too easily accessible and customizable side mouse buttons. Yeah, that's okay. So it's really optional whether to use a period or not. Since these aren't complete sentences, I don't think it's imperative to use. But the type size here is really, really large. Also, consider placement, right? Proximity, placement. It's not specifically clear to the viewer whether this caption, and I'm overstating this a little bit, but it's a very pertinent design element that has to do with placement of objects and placing objects in proximity to where they're related to what they're related to, therefore strengthening the relationship between the caption and the element which it's describing. Okay, so theoretically, this caption right here, the viewer doesn't know immediately whether this caption belongs to this image, or to this image, right? Conversely, the viewer may not know whether this caption belongs to this image or this image. So you really want to make it there. This one's a little bit more clear as to where it belongs, but these two, especially this one, it just doesn't. It could be any one of three. This one could be any one of the two. So really want to watch your placement and your proximity of your caption areas. Okay, so those are my recommendations moving forward. I'd like to see you work on those. If you have any questions, comments, concerns at all, please let me know. But I would like to give you a little example. This is a wonderful example. I'll have to reduce the size of this considerably for it to fit in the window. There we go. That's beautiful. Now note some of the elements that have been used in this. Now take a look at, for example, the width of everyday and the width of design. Those are exactly the same width as this portion of the coffee machine. So that's by design. That's not a mistake. Conversely, we have this use of circles. And the reason we have this use of circles is because the image itself uses circles prominently. We got the circle right here. Then we have the logo up here, which has these three circles. Those are mimicked right over here. Isn't that cool? And then another thing that is really interesting here is you see these dots right here. Again, circles, right? Repeating this pattern, but also these kind of play a double role in that this mimics what would be coming out of the coffee machine, right? So this is a really effective design. And we take a look at your design and we see you've got these circles. And the closest I can see of taking from the image itself is the scroll wheel right here. So maybe in your circles, you can add just a little texture around the outside to mimic that kind of hand grip on that scroll wheel, that little texture, those little textured bumps that give you a grip on that scroll wheel. Maybe you could mimic that around the circles. Think about that, but I would like to see a little bit more of a connection between the design elements and the actual image itself. Okay. All right. That's about all I have. 11 minutes. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to take that long. But anyways, I did want to be as thorough as possible. So good start. And if you have any questions, Miranda, please let me know. I'll be glad to make any clarifications needed. Great start. Thanks so much for sharing.